everybody, Rhonda here, Rhonda Superfox with Superfox Promotions, and our Superfox Promotions music commentator, Travis T, with us tonight.
What's up, YouTubers?
Hey, and we're doing our first official series of Knockin' on Music Store. And if you remember, that's what I talked about the other night. It's going to be the series where we do attribute each show specifically to a musician who has died. And tonight's tribute is going to be
Jeff Hanneman, Slayer.
Jeff Hanneman. And as we mentioned, we were meaning to do this on his birthday, which would have been his 52nd birthday. But due to technical difficulties, we did the whole, 10 or 15 minutes, and there was no sound.
I hate technical difficulties.
So, yeah, they are no good in this business. So tonight we're going to go ahead and try this again. And I'm going to go ahead and let you start the tribute here.
Okay.
So what do you got?
Well, I first discovered Jeff back in 1988 when the Big Four each had their respective records. Metallica had come out with And Justice for All. Megadeth had So Far So Good, So What.
Right.
Anthrax was touring in support of State of Euphoria, and Slayer was supporting South of Heaven.
Right.
And I went out, with the reputation that Slayer had been called one of the scariest bands in metal, and I thought, well, this has to be on my bucket list to get this record. So, and at the time, they were really all at the height of their careers in '88. So I wanted to have the latest and greatest, offering they put out. And so that was South of Heaven. I went out and I bought it, and just blown away by the technical proficiencies of Jeff and Kerry King and Tom Araya and Dave Lombardo. It was just a tour de force of metal. And back then, music was a different thing. It was more of a tactile thing where you would buy a cassette
Right.
and it had a jacket, and it was usually a thick jacket if it was a major band, and they would have all the lyric sheets in it.
Right.
They had the song credits in it.
Yeah.
And even go so far as to have the credits for the guitar solos, which I thought was amazing. And, one name kept coming to the surface with that was Jeff Hanneman.
Right.
And even the solos, he just had this sound about him where it was this, he would just rip this bluesy solos, and it all sounded like one idea instead of a lot of guys where they would take a bunch of riffs and they would piece them together and that was their solo. But with Jeff, it was just perfectly fluid, and it all came together.
I remember those cassettes. I would always get them, and it would be. I'm a lyric person. He is. Travis T is a music all the way. I'm a lyrical person. I like the. Music is great. I like the drums and such, and the guitar solo is really cool. But I really like the lyric side of it. So I was always excited when the cassettes you would open it. It would be really long. Oh, it's got the lyrics in it, and it was always a bummer when you would open it and it would be blank and one sheet. So.
That was usually the indie bands that would have jackets like that.
Yeah, or even like the LPs. That was always cool when it had like the lyrics on it.
Jackets.
Yeah, so that's my story about that.
Definitely a different world today with music. But the lyric sheets, and I would just be diving into that for hours on end, looking at the stuff about war and death and Satanism and all those family-friendly subjects that were just real popular with the PMRC back then. And because Jeff, he would write some of the lyrics, not all the lyrics, but many of the lyrics with Tom. He would also write the bass lines to some of the songs, and many of the greatest songs that people grew up listening to Slayer were penned by Jeff or co-wrote by Jeff and Kerry or Tom. So he really was the mastermind.
I don't think that happens hardly anymore, and even then, I don't think that was very often back then, was it? That somebody did all of that in collaboration themselves.
Well, he didn't write all of it. I want to clarify that for the fans. He wrote the lion's share of the material.
Okay.
Whereas you have bands like Metallica, who that's very collaborative between James and Kirk and Lars. That's a little more equal. Obviously James writes a lot of the stuff, but with Slayer, it was. I want to say it's really so predominantly Jeff that comes up with the creativity of that band, and he was able to evolve it over so many years, where they started out, they were just strictly a metal band, and then into, you know, the later 90s, he, you know, because Jeff grew up listening to a lot of punk bands.
Well, I even know, yeah.
TSOL and
Right.
Black Flag and that kind of stuff, and that really started coming into play,
Right.
you know, with God Hates Us All, and that they grew into a more hardcore band, which is amazing that he was able to help evolve that and still maintain the Slayer sound, where you pick up just about anything, that's Slayer.
Right.
Even though it didn't sound like the Slayer of 1981, it still sounded like Slayer. It's incredible.
Right, because I personally am not a Slayer fan. That's a little bit beyond my realm of, I can do Judas Priest and
It's not
Metallica
highly
and
accessible
some.
to
I'm
females.
getting into Megadeth now, but Slayer is not something. But I hear Slayer, and I know that it's probably Slayer that's
Easily
playing.
identifiable.
And
sure.
I can hear the punk influence in it, definitely. So I definitely hear that.
And on that note, Jeff was real on point with, he referred to Slayer as punk metal. That was his kind of title. So he, you know, merging the two together, whereas when I would listen to it, it always sounded like metal to me.
Right.
You know, with the dual guitars, a la Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, that sort of thing.
Right.
But to me personally, what Jeff meant to me, really just the ultimate heavy metal icon. You know, and I've prayed in the temple of Jeff Hanneman for decades. You know, so.
Well, if you remember back in the day, I mean, when I was in high school and we had the little quad, what were they, the quads?
Yeah.
In high school.
Yeah.
There was the punk table,
Sure.
the heavy metal table,
The factions.
the nerd table, and there was just, the music was just heavy metal,
Yeah.
new wave, and punk.
It was
And then you had the
everything in the
disco.
gamut. Yeah.
And now all the genres that are out there are just, it's incredible how many genres. So maybe that kind of
Yeah.
helped how you said the punk metal.
Sure.
Because that was not, when I was in high school, that was not out there. But I could see it kind of happening, starting when the punk and the metal kids started kind of
Yeah.
coercing together and getting together and hanging out.
Yeah.
Towards the end of my high school years, you know, they started hanging out more together. And even the outfits starting to get combined and stuff. So, but what do I know? I don't
And
know.
speaking of image, back then it was more, you know, it was more to the forefront, where you would open up the jackets and whatnot, and you would have pictures of the band. And I remember on South of Heaven there was a black and white still of the band. It was super cool, just really awesome. And it was the four guys. It was Jeff and Tom and Carrie and Dave, kind of kneeling in an alley, obviously somewhere in L.A. And I can remember Jeff, he had this straight, long blonde hair, no frills about it, no hairband nonsense, black leather jacket, jeans, and he just had this stone face. And I was like, that guy's badass. If you saw Jeff Hanneman in an alley and you knew nothing of Slayer, you would think he's just a badass because he just looked cool.
Right.
You know, and not only that, and with the guitars, I mean, way back in the day, he always played, you know, this kind of thing. This is a JH600 LTD. This is very close to the signature that Jeff played from ESP, which he picked up way back into the mid-90s. And I'll show you again. He always liked to kind of sticker it up with various things. I didn't do nearly as good a job as he would have done, but a lot of punk stickers, a lot of skulls on there,
Right.
and you know, that was kind of his shtick, you know. And he always liked the big, fat super struts. At one time, he had a black Les Paul that he retrofitted with a Kaler tremolo, much like this one, and that's, you know, that was another element of the Slayer heaviness that he just innovated by himself. And people don't realize how much of an effect he had on not only the band, but the whole music genre in and of itself.
Right. So that's where I was gonna start getting into like some inspirations that he's done. Do you know of any inspirations that he's done outside of the music, or do you know just of the inspiration?
He had just a very scant amount of side projects. I believe there was something he had done back in the 80s with Rocky George of suicidal tendencies, but nothing that ever really came to light so much for, you know, the massive fans that had always followed Slayer. For him, I mean, as far as, you know, what was distributed, it was really just all about Slayer.
And that's okay. I mean, as the show, as I talked about, the show is anything that a musician does music-wise or anything inspirational outside of music. So I always like to ask and see if there's anything that might be outside of that. But I know the fans are just an enormous amount of fans that he inspired. I know
it's legion.
Yeah, I know you yourself were so inspired enough to travel across the United States to.
I went to the memorial in Los Angeles at the Palladium back in 2013 for his service, and it was bittersweet. It was very moving for me. You know, when I first found out, of course, it just shook me to my foundations, because I felt like I kind of grew up with this guy. You know, I started listening to him when I was in high school, and all of a sudden, you know, at 49, he just dies, and that just, I mean, I struggled with that reality, but you know, I could not be at that service. That was something that I felt as a fan. I had to be part of that, and I'm very happy to have been there and witnessed that.
Right. I've seen, when I mentioned this, that I was going to be doing this video blog, there was one of my Facebook fans had mentioned that it felt like to him he had lost a brother. He actually got a tattoo on the last cruise. I don't know, that cruise that's out recently, that 80s cruise or whatever I think it is.
Monsters of Rock,
yes,
possibly.
He got a tattoo of Hanneman on that, and so he showed a picture of his tattoo, and he said it felt like he had lost a brother. Yeah. So it's just, you know, that's the kind of influence that Jeff Hanneman had. So it doesn't always have to be an outside influence that's not musical. There's so much music out there that he's inspired in people, and it just continues even now. Look how passionate you are right now. I know when I came to you about this blog, you were just, I got to do this.
Yeah.
I got to do this tribute. So is there anything else? Oh, how about, I want to talk about how we found out about this. That was very unfortunate.
I'm actually not into the Facebook thing, but I had heard from a good friend of mine that she actually witnessed on Sherry Moon Zombie's page that there was some rumor going on that Jeff Hanneman had passed, and I thought that can't possibly be right. I mean, I knew about the spider bite. I knew that he was on hiatus from Slayer, but a death that just didn't really add up to me, and so I thought it was a hoax. And then I found out later that night that he really had passed on, and I can't even describe what that felt like as a fan.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I when I had found out, again, like I said, I'm not a big Slayer fan, but my roommate was a huge Slayer fan, and there would have been so many hoaxes going on, I think even that week and the week before, and I said, oh, here's another one, Jeff Hanneman died, and my roommate was like, what? And then I saw where it came from was also Sherry Moon Zombie's page, and I'm like, wait a minute, this probably is not a hoax, because this is Sherry Moon Zombie. This is probably a reliable source. So in that moment, I was like, oh, I probably should not have done that. Another reason why I've chosen to do these series, because just so much out there, misinformation, people who don't know about people who have died, how they've died, what they've contributed. So I felt really bad when I had done that, and if I could go back and do that again, that's one thing in my life I would definitely change. It felt like such an insensitive thing to do, but again, Facebook, you know, with all the hoaxes that were going on, you just didn't know, and I was like, oh, here's another one, listen to this, and then that was horrible. The worst thing I probably could have done, but you just don't know. So
it was a rough time for a lot of, for most everybody in heavy metal to go through that. And I can remember the first time that I saw Jeff play. It was during the Clash of the Titans tour. That was back in '91. Show my age there. And that was at the Seattle Center Arena. I don't even know if the arena is still around. It might be Key Arena, or I'm not sure what it's called now. But back then it was the Seattle Center Arena in Washington State. And it was the Clash of the Titans tour with Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. And Alice in Chains was opening up. And at that time, not many people knew who Alice in Chains was. And they came up and they were supporting Facelift, which was a terrific album. And I remember that they had, I was there for the start of the show. Alice had finished the set. And then Slayer came on. I knew it was Slayer because they opened with Hell Awaits.
Right.
They sound like nobody else, right?
That's what I was saying earlier.
Right.
I know. Yeah.
Even though I had not seen them live, I knew right then and there who it was. And when they were done, they had these folding chairs lined up on the floor of the Coliseum, and all the folding chairs were up in a mountain after the pit had essentially enveloped the entire floor, and all the chairs had been discarded. And it was like, this is a Slayer show. This is how it is. And I can remember Jeff was way off on the opposite end of the stage of me, and he had his head down the whole time, and just the hair, and he had the black long sleeve shirt that he always has on, black leather pants,
right.
and the guitar, and I was just transfixed the entire show, singing all the lyrics. And the people in the concourse, when we were off to get the refreshments and whatnot, they were pointing at me like, that guy's nuts. He was singing all the lyrics. He's insane. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a Slayer show. That's what you do at a Slayer show. You just lose control. It's not a choice to headbang. You just start doing it.
Right. And
it was, it was amazing. I'll never forget that.
How about, have you met any members in Slayer?
It's funny because they did an in-store at Tower Records in Tacoma back in 1994 when they came out with the...
In Washington?
Yeah. When they came out with Divine Intervention. And Paul Bostock was with them at that time. And I came in. It was very early in the morning. Way too early for these guys to be up.
Right.
And I saw Jeff. And it was just like one of those where I was just beside myself. And I was like, there's Jeff.
Wow.
And I was like, what's up, Jeff? It was BFE in the morning, right? And I'll never forget, he said, no. I said, how's it going, Jeff? And he said, it's going slow. It's like so not happy to be there. But that was the sum of all my interactions with Jeff Hanneman. But it's still
so you talked to him.
I talked to him.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So
just the fact that I met that dude for a second was just phenomenal.
Well, one more thing maybe before we close out. How about, can you tell us maybe something that's one of the most shocking things you can remember, or you've heard, or a memory of them, or something unusual, or something exciting that you want to close with this episode?
I just want to say, reign in peace. Miss you, brother. Slayer isn't Slayer without you, and you're gone, but you're not forgotten. We'll always remember you.
Definitely not forgotten. Definitely not. And I think that this is going to get a pretty big response. So I'm glad that this is our first episode. So I hope it gets some good feedback.
Pleasure to share. I hope you guys enjoyed this. There's more to come with other various artists from different genres, and we hope you guys stay tuned. Yeah.
Please let us know how you feel about this episode. Travis T is more than welcome to hear any comments. I am as well. Constructive criticism, positive feedback, whatever you we love debate. If you have any debates, we're into that. So please feel free to comment here or on the Facebook page, especially on the YouTube page. We're not getting any comments, so feel free to do that. We'd love to have some debate on there. So I guess that's it. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time, this is it, I guess. So have a great night. Bye.
Thanks, guys.